We're back, people. What is up? I wasn't planning on streaming today, but the Dolphins dropped a 15-minute interview with Jon-Eric Sullivan. I happened to watch it, and I thought there was some interesting, topics discussed. I want to go over his philosophy, some specific quotes that he definitely said. I recommend checking out the whole thing. It was very interesting to listen to. I just like hearing about the process and how they do things. The first thing I wanted to talk about um, was probably my favorite quote because it's something that I've been talking about for a long time. But they asked him about his approach in the draft and free agency, and basically, he said first he said his approach within the draft is a best player available approach, which I've kind of been pushing for a long time. I love hearing it. I mean, most GMs do say that it is a best player available, with a little bit of a caveat because he also goes on to talk about what you think with need. He said, you have no idea what your needs are going to be, which is true. I think that sometimes we get caught up on things because, like last year, we thought our biggest need was going to be corners, and our corners actually ended up overperforming, and we thought edge was our strength, and our edges kind of end up underperforming. Like that type of thing does always end up being different. So, like, you do never know what quite your needs are going to be, but when you are stacking the board, he said, like when you stack the board, you do corners subconsciously. You kind of stack it for need a little bit value wise. So like you give a lot of guys similar grades, guys that are in like similar rated value, then sometimes the guys that are bigger needs or they're just a more premium position might get stacked higher. If you don't know what a stack is, it's literally just ranking the players. Typically, like if it's you have first round grades, say you have 13 first round grades, you'll stack all of those 13 players, and then you'll go to like the next round of players, and then you'll stack those guys. They're all kind of it's like it kind of tiers it out. But I thought that was like the most interesting quote. Sorry, I was making sure I could listen to that part of the video because I didn't have that part written down. Um, but yeah, I really like that quote. I just love the best player available strategy. He clearly believes in building through the draft, as he'll talk about many times throughout this clip. Like he talked about free agency a little bit too, where free agency is more about filling need, going after some difference makers, but it's not going to be really the main part of your roster. You want to build the culture through the draft because that's all those guys will know. When they come to the NFL, that's the first thing they'll know from the NFL. And, when you bring guys from other teams, it can kind of create this mix and match and maybe just doesn't get people as bought in. And, that's a problem that Dolphins have had in the past. But I just thought that was probably the most interesting a quote for me. Some other quotes, which I thought this was a good one. And it also kind of plays into another topic I wanted to talk about. Is he said, our division runs through Buffalo, New England, and New York. Cold weather places. There's a saying in our business, fast gets slow, but big doesn't get small, which is a very interesting quote. Like, so he clearly wants to get bigger, but he also said, we won't sacrifice speed and explosion and skill for a bunch of big, stiff guys, which I think is a big thing to take of note there because I really don't like big, stiff guys. Like, you want to get guys that are multiple. He talked about being multiple. He said, I think Wingfield was on an interview him. He asked him about basically how the NFL like offenses have become more run heavy. They're getting a little bit bigger while defenses have gotten smaller, and they've done that to sort of counteract it. But he talked about like it's about being multiple. You want to be able to, one game, run more gap, power heavy scheme, and then the next game, attack the edges a bit more. You want to have those guys up front that are big but also explosive, so you can have a mix and match, being multiple. I've talked about versatility a ton. I think versatility is very important. So like, obviously these are just quotes; it's all words, but this is kind of, I want to see the action of that. I do believe from his time with the Packers that is the actions he will take. Now, will he hit on those players? That's yet to be seen. But I do believe that will be his philosophy, which I definitely agree with. At least up front, he started like it all starts with. At one point, he said it all starts with the quarterback. But outside the quarterback, it starts up front, building your offense and defensive line, getting bigger. And then he said, like, in your skill positions, you want those explosive guys who play hard. He said mental toughness. I'll find the exact quote, but they asked him, what traits are you looking for in a player that building the roster? And he said mental toughness, physical toughness. You start there from a character standpoint, a burning desire to want to be the best that you can be and win. I definitely believe that to be true. Finding those types of guys is big because sometimes you find the guy that's the great prospect, all the talent in the world, and they don't have that mental and physical toughness. and they don't maybe have that desire to win, and you don't really want those guys on your on your team. That's not really how you want to build your culture. So I think getting big and athletic up front, maybe on the back end and the front end, like yeah, you can add some size, but you still want to be you still want to have like the toughness. You want that explosion. You don't necessarily need to be the biggest guys out on the the banner and stuff, but uh, in that interior, build big. He also talked about. I like that he talked about the cold weather places too, which is big. The best player available strategy. He also said it means everything becoming the Miami Dolphins GM. I believe wholeheartedly in the process that I'm bringing to the door from Green Bay. And he says he hopes it's a process that's here even long after he's gone. I mean, hey, if it works, then I hope so too. He talked about the free agents on the roster. He said they have 30 unrestricted free agents, and obviously they can't bring them all back. So it'll be interesting to see what names he brings back. The players he did mention by name, he brought up Achane, Brewer, Brooks, and Paul. And then Wingfield asked him about all of those players plus Waddle, and then Sullivan was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot about Waddle. Waddle for sure in that mix." And then he broke down all those players and kind of their strengths and weaknesses. Talked about Waddle and his explosiveness, like getting in and out of his breaks as good as anyone. Brewer, the freak that he is, plays way bigger than his size too, but is insane out in the open field. He talked, extensively about Achane. He called Brooks an absolute dog, instinctive. Basically, gave Brooks all the comments, and then also Paul saying he's a behemoth. He also apparently had a chance to talk to Patrick Paul. It's just very interesting. Those are the names he brought up, especially Brewer and Brooks. I think Achane, Paul, and then also kind of Waddle. That makes sense to bring up, the younger guys. But I think Brewer and Brooks, guys who are on were brought in as free agents to the team, and they're on the last year of their deal. I think it's big that he brought those two up because I think that means that he definitely will look to extend those guys. I think that at least gives us that kind of idea that he clearly sees those guys as potential building blocks. I'm excited for the long term of the team for the first time in a long time, just for the change in team building philosophy. Yeah. Underwhelming, hired, not sold. Okay. Can I ask you why? What hire would have been whelming for you? Shout out Young Justice. Because to be honest, when it comes to GMs, I never really get overwhelmed or underwhelmed from the hires because it is kind of a crapshoot. I like hearing the quotes. I like hearing. I think he has a good philosophy. Now, do I think he'll end up drafting well? I have no idea. We have no sample size of it. That's why when it comes to this kind of thing, and even we'll talk about Jeff Hafley because Jeff Hafley seems like he's the favorite to be the coach. They're bringing him in for the second interview on Monday, and I wouldn't be surprised if they don't let him leave. I think they're going to be trying to hire him. Even Hafley, I think it's really, I understand having preferences, but I think it's really hard to have a good idea. Because when it comes to player evaluation, you have a decent amount of the picture. I would say the film is 70% of the picture, so you can at least have a good idea of what's going on. But when it comes to coaching and GMs, from our point of view, we have 10% of the picture. So I think it's really hard to actually have a good idea of these things, You can have a feeling, you can, have some optimism, some slight pessimism, but I don't think you should feel super strongly either direction when it comes to coaches or GM hires. I think the only coaching hires you can feel confident about are guys that were previous coaches because you have a very big sample size, previous NFL head coaches, because then you understand what they were as a coach. But even then, it's still a bit of a crapshoot because some guys go to another team and are much worse. Some guys do another team and do much better. That's why I don't get too heavily into it. Not going to be sold on the Jeff Hafley hire though. Can I ask you why though? Why are you sold on Jon-Eric Sullivan? And if Jon-Eric Sullivan wants to bring in Hafley, why would you not be sold on Hafley? Because realistically, how would you know? Because I don't know. I mean, I don't know if Hafley's even good or not. But if you are sold on Sullivan, how can you not be sold on Hafley? That's the one thing I don't understand. I wonder why no big name coaches want to come to Miami. I mean, we're more in a rebuild than some of the other teams. But also, I mean, only 2 coaches have been hired, and I guess they were previous coaches, but I don't know. I don't know if I think that's not quite what's going on. I don't know. See, we don't know. It's just, more of a feeling thing. We won't know for 2 to 3 years. Yeah, that's fair. I think Sullivan's going to get time because with GM, it's more of a process, and he's trying to build through the draft. That is a long process. I actually think the next coach could get screwed no matter who it is. Like anyone hired, I think they could end up being a one and done just based on where this roster is at. I think the coach could end up getting blamed. But I also think like they should get some time to actually get a realistic chance. But say the coach, next year's really bad. Coach has a bad year, and someone ends up getting free that they didn't expect. Like same thing we talked about yesterday with Vrabel and Mayo. That could happen with a guy getting a one. I could see next year's coach getting screwed no matter who it is. A whelming hire, the Ravens tree. Okay, why? Because the Ravens have drafted well. But you don't know how much that guy played into that, Mainly Sullivan comes across as a lightweight. Okay. I don't even know what that means, but okay. It's more of a philosophical question, man. Why no big name coaches want to come to Miami? I don't know if philosophical is the right word. There are 2 big name and they were already in talks with their respective teams before he even fired our head coach. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with reading into stuff way too much. There's so much going on that we don't know about. Obviously, the Ravens have the best GM in NFL history. DaCosta? Or are you talking about the guy before him, Newsom? Because Newsom ain't there. But, I mean, the Packers have just as much of a draft history as the Ravens. Hey, Ryder, haven't been able to watch live in a while. Oh, what's up, Scotty? Yeah, I haven't seen you in a while. I'm not buying the fake hype again. I mean, I'm not trying to hype anything up. I'm not trying to give anyone fake hype. I'm just saying exactly what he said. Yes, it's all words at the end of the day, but I do believe in his philosophy. But will he draft the right players? Yet to be seen. We don't know. We don't even have a coach yet, so I'm not trying to give any sort of fake hype. I'm just trying to give what's going on. But yeah, we'll see how it plays out. Yeah, I thought, the best player available thing I thought was very intriguing for him to say. I liked his quote from the cold weather stuff. That was also intriguing. The fast gets slow, but big doesn't get small. But don't sacrifice speed and explosion for a bunch of big, stiff guys, which I also think shows up if you look at the guys they've drafted in Green Bay. They've gotten bigger on the Packers O-line. I don't know if they've necessarily gotten better. I think they've actually kind of gotten worse. But I think that was just more some miss on some players. But they did get bigger, and the guys weren't like less athletes or anything. They were still pretty good athletes. He talked about mental toughness being multiple. He talked about, so he said Sullivan subscribes to the philosophy of building a team from the inside out, fortifying the foundation first and foremost. That approach creates flexibility and multiplicity. It creates adaptable game plan, allows the program to win at home and in hostile environments. The quote is, "We've got to be dominant on the offensive line and dominant on the defensive line. Then get explosive and athletic on the perimeter where we can attack all 3 levels of the field and give the offensive coordinator flexibility to call the game the way that he wants to call the game, most importantly in any element." And I think that is true if you look at the Packers team. That is definitely the build they go for. Now, do they always end up getting every player right? No. But that is definitely, if you look at their team, they have definitely built through that. They've drafted a lot of O-line and D-line. They've drafted a lot of athletic players at the skill positions over the years. I think I think high RAS, like I've talked about with Jon-Eric Sullivan. If you look at their guys, like the edges they've drafted, Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness, very high RAS. Both have like the size and athletic traits. Weren't my favorite players, but those are the guys they drafted. They drafted some like high athletic linebackers. Yeah, ban me. Happy to go. You good, Dylan? Do you think McDermott is getting fired? And so should we get him? I don't think he's getting fired. But I don't know if I really am. I mean, McDermott would be not bad either, but I think, struggling to win with Josh Allen at quarterback is not the best sign. I think that's something with a lot of these head coaches that are like the big time head coaches that were former head coaches. all of them had like, like McCarthy had Rodgers when he was doing good. Harbaugh had Lamar Jackson. McDermott had Josh Allen, and these guys still found ways to kind of throw things away plenty of times. And I think coming to the Dolphins, who don't even have a franchise QB, it'd be a lot worse situation for them. And if you look at the playoffs, I know people do not want to hire a first-time head coach. Personally, I don't really. I understand like it hasn't worked for Miami because the last few head coaches have been first-time hires. If you look at the playoffs, 6 of the 8 right now that are left were left at the end of this were first-time head coaches. Going into these final games, like majority of the playoff coaches were first-time head coaches. A lot of them play callers, whether most on the offense, but some on the defense as well, like D'Amico Ryans, Mike McDonald, who just won last night for the Seattle Seahawks. If you look at it every year, there's hires that maybe people don't expect to be the great ones. Last year Pete Carroll was hired. He's one of the better head coaches in NFL history, and he completely failed for the Raiders because it wasn't a good situation. Then you see guys like Ben Johnson having great success in year one. You got Mike McDonald having a really good year as well. So that's why I just don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with these coaches and GMs. But I just really wanted to talk about the Eric Sullivan thing because of his mainly the best player available quote, which I've been pushing heavily. And I've gotten a lot of pushback from people who said teams don't draft best player available. That's not how it works. Most teams go best player available with slight need considered when they're stacking. Like he said subconsciously you might stack a guy need over another guy when they're like rated very closely, but like the overall philosophy ends up going back to best player available. And I do recommend watching the interview. I know most of the interviews it's all talk. I mean, that's what an interview is. But it still is very interesting to just hear about his vision, what he's looking for. But yeah, it was a nice listen for sure. And now when you go through, BPA all the time, I agree. And then now I think when you look at, I've been watching a lot of guys. It's currently members only, but I did just make a video on Ted Hurst, the Georgia State receiver. Big fan of him. If he's someone you want to add that has size and speed at the receiver position, that's one of the guys in this class that I would be down for. But yeah, BPA across the board. I think, and realistically, almost every position for Miami is at least somewhat of a need anyways. Like, that's why I feel like I could be on board with almost anything in the first round, as long as I think they're at least arguably best player available. Yeah. I would prefer Campanelli over Halfley. We go first time head coach. Yeah, I can definitely understand that. I do think it's interesting that it seems like Halfley is very highly touted because he's gotten interviews with a lot of teams, and it seems like he's a finalist for most of the jobs that he's interviewed for. Like he's getting second interviews with a couple of teams, at least reportedly. It seems like he's definitely a good interviewer. I think when I've done more research on Halfley because he's the one I've expected to happen, just because of the Packers connection. I do like his scheme. I like defensively. I think he's actually a very good scheme guy. So I think he's going to bring at least a good defensive scheme. That's the one thing I can at least expect because I can go based on his calls in Green Bay. The other stuff like leadership, I mean, from the outside, it seems like he's pretty well respected. People speak pretty highly of him, but I can't know for sure if he's a good leader. He does have former head coaching experience from Boston College. I don't really care much about the college record. I don't know if there's much that translates, whether it's either perfect or horrible. We've seen the best college coach of all time not even work in the NFL, specifically for the Miami Dolphins. So I don't really care too much about the record. I mean, he had a bad Boston College team. But it's more about just like, at least he has the experience of building a staff, knows what comes with that responsibility. So there is that sort of experience at least. I think the big thing for Halfley comes down to who does he hire? I think that's something that is exciting for me is I think he will pick from the LaFleur tree more so. Aikman is picking Halfley for us. Yeah, I've heard that Aikman is pretty high in Halfley as well. I don't know how true it is, but it does seem like that. But I think coming from the LaFleur tree gets me pretty excited about the offense. I'd be very excited to see who his offensive coordinator is because if he does come from the LaFleur tree, which sticks in the Shanahan tree of things, which we just came off of McDaniel, you'll still be able to have your guys kind of translate to that pretty well. But I think they go a little more gap heavy than us, so they're willing to go a little more power. So I think it would be like a nice blend of like what we were already good at, but adding to it, being more multiple. And it would allow for, if you really wanted to bring in Malik Willis, he has experience with those guys in that scheme. I wouldn't be surprised if, I know the Dolphins do not have cap space, but like if they really wanted Malik Willis, like they will try. Like there's ways to manipulate cap for, you can push a lot of his money back to next season where the Dolphins actually have a lot of cap space if they really wanted to try to make it work out. And then also I think would give Quinn Ewers a chance to compete because Ewers I think only fits in the Shanahan style scheme, and if LaFleur's here, that at least gives him a chance. Proctor is big and athletic. Yeah, but Proctor's not good. That's the problem. That's Proctor's problem. I got scared Sullivan didn't mention Waddle at first. Yeah. But he talked about him first after that, and he's like, oh, yeah, I forgot Waddle. I got to talk about Waddle. Interesting. Like, I know, and those are the only 5. I'm trying to, like, is there anyone else he really didn't talk about that should have been talked about, I guess? I mean, he talked a little bit about, like, former rookie class, but I guess he just talked about, like, the great performers last year. I guess he didn't talk about the former first-round picks recently, but, I mean, those guys are going to be here, and we'll see if they take the jump or not. Problem is, will Aaron Brewer, Devon Achane, and Jordan Briggs be future / part of the future? I mean, I think they can be. I don't see why not. If they fit the scheme, I think they're still young enough to where they can be a part of the future for the next few years, you know? Maybe not past like 3 years, but for the next 3 years, they can definitely be a part of that future. What about Joe Brady? What about him? I mean, I know we're interviewing him. I just don't expect him to be someone they're looking for. Can someone point me to a game where Malik Willis was successful that doesn't include the last game of the season? Yeah, I would look at every game he's had to play for the Packers. Every game he's played for the Packers, he has played at least well, I would say. And that's over the last couple of seasons. So whether he started the game or came in midway, I would say he came in and filled in admirably every single time. And it was like a total of like 9 games or something. And you know, some of those were like half the game, some were full games. But overall, I was not a huge Malik Willis fan coming out of college, and I don't think he did well at Tennessee. They didn't really give him a chance, but like with Green Bay, I think he's been quite impressive, and I have no bias in that race. Same stuff, different day with this team. Not really sure what you mean. Wasn't Malik the reason they made the playoffs last year? I mean, maybe. I know they won every game he started last year. No Chop. I didn't mention Chop or like Grant, but I mean, those guys are going to be here and get a shot. It's just because Chop had a disappointing second season. I expect a bounce back personally. Yeah, no Minka. I think what's really telling is like no Minka, no Chubb, and no Austin Jackson. 3 guys I think we expect the team to potentially move on from, and those are pretty big names, specifically. Hello, I remember you didn't like Malik. I don't know if I was making draft content much though around that time, but I didn't really like anyone in that class. Are we still Green Bay's QB coach? I wouldn't be surprised if Green Bay's QB coach they hire him to be like offensive coordinator or something. I believe it's Sean Mannion, who is a former NFL quarterback out of Oregon State. I believe I'm pretty sure Mannion was around when I first started doing the draft, and he's been the QB coach for the last couple of seasons for the Packers, I believe. And he is also doing. He's the play caller in the East-West Shrine game for one of the teams, so he's getting an up close look at the East-West Shrine Bowl players. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, they're probably going to try to bring the guys. You think Chop and Minka will be gone from under this new regime? Not Chop. I don't see. There's like no reason to move on from Chop. I think Minka could very easily be because just cap reasons. Chop's still young, and you don't really gain anything from getting rid of him, and his value's as low as it will be. I don't think you get rid of a player like that after he had like a really strong rookie season. And I think second season, you know, there's some reasons he struggled too, like from injury and like playing time that I think really hurt him as well. And then hopefully he can get back on track in year 3. I expect, more like we've seen this happen before with like a really good year one, year two really bad. It's happened multiple times with a lot of Dolphins players actually. And then year three is a bounce back, not quite as good as year one, but definitely not near as bad as year two. And that's kind of where I'm expecting Chop to be. But we shall see. The reason to move on from Chop is he sucks. Okay. Thank you for the input. Yeah, very interesting interview. Any other questions? Quick little stream today. Best player available. Always gotta make that clear. I will be pushing the best player available propaganda my entire life. I will also continue to push Jalen Waddle propaganda because people, that's the one player I'll push propaganda for in Miami is Jalen Waddle because he deserves it because that guy's a stud. And some people don't think he's that good. Yeah. Yep. Chop played limited snaps and was hurt. I think it's I think people need to be a little patient. You can't. I understand being disappointed in his second year, but like acting like he sucks after his first season, like that first season was really, really good, like really high level. He had like one of the highest pressure rates in the league. It was like 18 something percent. The highest this year was like 20 something percent, and like 18 would have put him in the top 5 again. So like that, you don't just do that by mistake either. And that was after having a slow start. So like he really turned up. I think there's a reason the second year slowed down. And I think it had to do with some injury and playing time stuff. Even Anthony Weaver said like Chop would have been a lot more productive if he just saw playing time early on. But I would say give him some time. Chip is a one-trick pony speed rush, and he's not even good at that in the NFL. See, that's where I know you're not watching the film because Chop Robinson's best move is power. It is speed to power is his best move. His best move, and almost all of his wins are speed to power. I think people just think he has a great first step and think he's a speed and like bendy rusher. He's not. He's actually not that bendy. I would say he has like average bend. He is at his best using leverage and speed to power to win. And honestly, he wins more to the inside with like an inside counter a lot too. Like that was a lot of his sacks this year were like stunting to the inside. Because I think people get a preconceived notion of him and then they think that's all he is. That's actually, I think, where he struggles a bit is on his speed and winning around the edge with bend. I don't love him, but do you think they take Taylor Green as a project QB? I mean, potentially. I also don't love him. I think there's other Dolphins fans that love him more, that are more in the draft community. They seem to be all about Taylor Green, personally. I mean, I don't mind throwing a late-round flyer, but I wasn't a huge fan of his film. I don't like guys that really don't throw to the middle of the field, and he's not much of a middle of the field thrower. Yeah. Well, if Hafley comes here, I'd be interested to see how Hafley uses Chop because Hafley's defense was really good with Micah Parsons. It was top 5 and top 6 in 2024. 2025, it was in the top 11, top 12 range, but it did drop off a bit when Parsons went down. I think they would have been top 10 easily with Parsons still there. Okay, can he set the edge and defend the run? Not from what I've seen. That's why I think he's a one-trick pony. You want me to give an honest opinion and something that I don't think this is a good thing. I don't think this is a good thing, but this is my honest opinion. Chop was better versus the run this year than he was pass rushing. Surprisingly, that shouldn't be how it is, but he was. So I think when the whole edge setting thing, I actually think he made his run. I would guess his run stuff rate for the amount of snaps he played versus the run was actually pretty high. And I actually thought he was better versus the run than like Chubb was. That's why I was like very surprised about him not playing earlier in the season because I thought when he was playing versus the run, it was mostly better than what Chubb was doing. Which is weird. I don't want that to be the case for Chop, but I think most of his problems were pass rushing in year 2. I wouldn't say he's ever going to be like a big time run defender or anything, but I don't think that was his issue at all. We need a QB late round flyers is not the way. I mean, I agree. I think it's usually just a waste of a pick, but I think you need as many dart throws as possible. The problem with Miami is they're not in a position to get any good quarterbacks early in the draft. Because there's not really many. Most of the good quarterbacks went back, and the only one, I mean, obviously Mendoza's going to be gone. And even next year, guys, like people are being like the 2027 class. Most of the 2027 class is the people that thought like were players that were going to be in the 2026 class. I feel like most of those guys have a lot to prove, like in that list of players still to be like top picks. Like I didn't see anyone in that list, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a surefire NFL stud. And I'm like, no, they all need to take a step to be first round picks, I think, next year. Given what you've seen, does this play justify being a first round pick? I would say, based on last year, no. But that doesn't mean he sucks or he's a bust. I just think that's like way too premature. If Halfley is the head coach and he wants to plug from, I'd be cool with Sean Mannion as OC or Ryan Downward or Marcus Covington as DC. Yeah, I don't know too much about the defensive coordinators from that side. I haven't looked too much into it, but I do think Sean Mannion would be interesting. He's pretty young. I think, the offensive coordinators, like, it's going to be kind of a crapshoot. But if they come with LaFleur's playbook, I'm going to be at least happy with the potential designs of stuff because I think LaFleur is very good at his job. Now, will they call the right plays? Who knows? We'll see how that ends up being, but yeah. I think we might get Beck later on. Yeah, I mean, Beck would be fine too. I think Beck can be like a decent backup. But I don't know. I think like Beck and Ewers are kind of a similar type level of player to me. Similar levels. Not the same type of player, but similar levels. Not the most physically gifted players. Could probably get the job done within a system. Would he go BPA but punt on this year and draft and stock picks when he gets his scouts in, since he starts January and scouting starts after draft review? I think that might be a little overplayed, Donovan, just because you have to think like all the scouts he's going to bring in are guys who were doing work elsewhere. Like I believe they're bringing in someone like they already, I forget what his name was, but it was a former Miami player, a former Hurricane player who was doing work with Green Bay. All of these guys were already doing scouting work leading up to this. So why they might be a little bit behind in terms of like structuring things, all of these guys have been doing scouting work on this class for the past year or two. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. I don't think he's going to punt on the 2026 class. Maybe they think the 2027's class better and they might try to stockpile some future picks, but I don't think they're going to move on too much. Sean Mannion was an awful QB. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't really matter, though, when it comes to play calling. Usually the guys who are bad QBs end up being pretty good play callers. The reason they made it to the NFL level is just because they were smart. Who cares if he was good or not, I mean, Kellen Moore wasn't good. Lots of like the head coaches, like what's his face, Kevin O'Connell, played quarterback. The Vikings head coach, he wasn't very good. I see you can pronounce our guy's name right. Did I get it right, Grant? Because I didn't look it up. That was just me guessing. Cade Klubnik. In the fourth, probably not, Justin, but I do think Klubnik is one of the guys in the class that actually has some upside, but he was pretty uninspiring this second season, or this past season. But I just don't, I don't know, I don't really want to use a fourth round pick on that. I'd rather just, I just feel like all of the, like once you get to the fourth round, they're all crapshoots, so I'd rather just wait till like a little bit later, and unless you really prefer someone. Same thing with like Drew Aller, I'd rather just wait. Well, KOC isn't a good head coach, so he's carried by Flores. Interesting take, that's for sure. That is sure interesting. I think he's one of the best quarterback developmental guys in the class. He gets terrible quarterback play or terrible quarterbacks and has made a lot of them look a lot better than they are. There's a lot of coaches in the league that were former quarterbacks, and a lot of them aren't great. I don't think your play on the field really matters much when it comes to your coaching ability. I actually don't think it matters at all. Yeah. See if there's anything else being said on Twitter. Did I miss anything? Also, I would just like to say I have to make this clear. That play last night with the Broncos Bills, because I've tweeted about this. It's driving me nuts that how many people thought that was a catch. It's driving me nuts. If you know the rules of football, it was an obvious interception. I didn't even think I'm like, yeah, they just did a quick review because every turnover is reviewed. They did a quick review, boom, confirmed. I was like, yeah, no big deal. I didn't think it would be a big deal at all until I took Twitter and so many people thought it was a catch. Like, guys, he did not complete the process of a catch. If that ball ended up hitting the ground after the DB kind of took it away, it would have been deemed incomplete. Cooks did not complete the process of the catch. What did you say about Drew Aller? I didn't really say much about him right now, but I'm not the. I mean, I wouldn't mind throwing a late round, like a super late round flyer on Drew Aller, but he's not my favorite prospect. He's coming off the injury. I think he has pretty poor accuracy, which scares me, and I don't think he's the most gifted athletically either. And I also think the injury could even affect his athleticism even more. I think he's like a pocket passer, but he's not. Two things that worry me. I think that translate really well to the NFL level are accuracy and pocket awareness, and I think those are two of his biggest weakness. He's actually not a bad processor, but I think pocket awareness and accuracy, like you got to have that to translate to the NFL. Accuracy you can work on, but like pocket presence, most don't get much better. And same with accuracy. Yes, it's 100%. 100% interception. Not even a question in my mind. When will you drop your top 10 list in each college positions? I don't know. I'm probably waiting until I want to at least see these All-Star games coming up. I think I'm going to do some like streams during like maybe the East-West Shrine Bowl or like the Senior Bowl, like some of the practices come out. We can talk a little bit about that. Want to get a better idea. I still have to watch more prospects. I'm sure I could do it at some positions. But some other positions, I don't even know if I've watched 3 running backs. Running backs I've barely watched. 10 quarterbacks. I don't even know if there's 10 quarterbacks to truly grade in this class that will get drafted. I'm sure there will be 10, but after like 4 or 5, I'm like, do I even want to watch these guys anymore? Receiver, I could do top 10. Tight end, I probably could do top 10. Tackle, I probably could. Guard, I don't know. I actually don't think I could do a top 5. What about Arch Manning? I mean, if I had to guess, I would guess he would be the number 1 overall pick next year. Yeah. Seattle's just a dominant defense. Bo Nix, apparently he broke a bone in his ankle on like one of the final plays. It was like, that run play where they ran like a QB power to the left, like they pulled the offensive lineman around to the left, and he got tripped up. I think it was on that play. It was one of the final few plays before they threw up the one pass interference that Trey Wright got. It was like right before that. What's your impression of Nathan Shieldhouse? I haven't looked too much into him because I haven't seen. I know he's interviewing with a couple teams, but the Dolphins aren't interviewing him. So I don't know much about him. But those are the types of guys I don't mind taking chances on. Maybe the guy's a little bit younger, coming from the McVay tree. Like, yeah, I don't think it's a bad shot to take, but I don't really know that much about him. I saw a video of him doing like some of their with like game planning and stuff, but that's pretty much all I know. Ryder, you're about to cash on your Mendoza, dude. That's about to be. It's pretty much locked unless something insane happens. But before the season started, plus 6,000 Fernando Mendoza to go first overall. And I don't think I've ever made a bet like that before. I never have bet like future bets before. And I just saw someone on Twitter saying like his odds were crazy. And I'm like, yeah, Mendoza's going to Indiana and I like his Cal film. I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if he end up being a super riser. That's about to be crazy hit. Hopefully nothing crazy happens. You think Arch pulls an Eli? It's possible. But I guess it depends on who the team is. What's your payout? It would be like it's like 1,200 something. It'd be an insane hit. I'm taking the old Miss QBs there in the third round. What do you think? I mean, I think he's one of the QBs in this class that at least can play QB. I mean, obviously, I'm gonna have some questions about his size, but he is a very high-end athlete. He would at least be fun to watch. He's one of the QBs that can actually play quarterback. I also don't even know he's gonna be in the draft because he's suing the NCAA, right? I don't even know what's going on there. Manning, Warner, or Brady would be excellent head coaches. See, but you have no idea, Rampage. You're only saying that because they were great NFL quarterbacks. You have no idea if they would be excellent NFL head coaches. No clue. I have no clue. They could be. They could not be, and it wouldn't surprise me either way. Because it's a completely different skill set to have. Unless he gets injured, but yeah, I agree. I mean, I would be shocked if he didn't go number one. Just based on this class. And the Raiders, even if the Raiders traded out, that means someone's trading up to get him like he's going to go. I'm not even sure who actually declared. Yeah, the Nussmeier declared. The Senior Bowl guys all declared. Nussmeier, even thirds. I mean, Nussmeier is one of the guys that I think can also play quarterback, but I think he's going to be like a career backup. But I think that's most of this class. I also think he was affected by injury this past season, which might have, maybe hurt him in the eyes of people, but who knows? We'll see how he does at the Senior Bowl. I think he's at the Senior Bowl, right? But I also think third's just a little too early for me. Eric Hunter. No, I haven't seen him. It's hard to get that film early on. After watching Sully interview his dominance in the trenches, I would love Peter Woods at 11. I mean, Peter Woods is a very good player. I think Peter Woods is a stud. I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone before 11, though, because there's not many D tackles in this class that I think can go super high. Even one of the better ones went back, the Oregon kid, Amari Washington. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Woods went that high. He didn't have the most productive year in 2025, but his film's really good. His 2024 year is more productive. And I just think based on this class, he'll go pretty high. If he's BPA, I'm not against it. But who knows? Do you think Mensa rises next year? Yeah, he is someone I'm looking on for sure. For sure to rise. He might be going to Miami, right? That's like a really potential thing. I have to watch his size. Pause. Well, you can watch the guys I mentioned talk about QB technique, reading defenses, offensive play calling, and you know they could at least have a good offense. I mean, you can, but even then, like, you can listen to a lot of people talk about things like, and they might not end up with the greatest play calling. It's so much around there. Now I know at 11 for me, definitely one of the better options. Mensa, yeah, I think that's really good for Mensa. What about Cole Payton? You a fan or not? Upside wise, I think he is one of the more interesting upside quarterbacks in the class. Big arm, pretty athletic, pretty big guy. North Dakota State lefty. Where's my Cole Payton? Do I have Cole Payton notes? I don't think I have them here. I swear I took it. Let me look up some of the things real quick. But yeah, I mean, late round dart throw, not against it, but he's not going to be my top option. But he's definitely got like a high level arm, decent decision maker, things like that. Do you think Sullivan likes at edge in the draft? That's one I'm a little bit concerned about because I think they like the high level athletes. And I'm a little concerned if Keldrick Falk tests well that they might end up being on the Keldrick Falk train. The edge class is just so weird. So many of the good edges are like 25 years old. And I think the Dolphins are trying to get younger. And I don't know, like Ruben Bain and David Bailey, they're probably the top 2 edges based on film, but Bain has question marks with like his arm length and stuff. Will teams be willing to take him that high? And then David Bailey, more of just a pass rusher, but he's also kind of got a little bit of a weird build. And I also think it will depend on his football character because he has some like dirty plays on his film. The edge class is so weird. Honestly, I hope it's Malachi Lawrence. You know me, I'm a big Malachi Lawrence fan. Ryder, would you take McCoy at 11? In this class, if they did that, I would be pretty happy with it. I know he's coming off the injury, but I think he's one of the, and I usually would not be, but like he's someone who's coming off the injury and now has had a lot of times to be healthy from it. So as long as the injury checks out, I think talent-wise, he is definitely a top 10 talent in this class. But he's got very good film. But I would probably go in another direction with a few other guys. But if he's the pick, I'm like, I think you got to start. Mensa to Miami is great news for us Kane fans. Yeah, he's very talented. He has some pretty good film at Duke. Dolphins will probably draft defense if they hire Halfley. I don't think that's necessarily true. I mean, McDaniel only made 2 first-round picks in his tenure, and they drafted edge and D tackle. I think they're just going to draft best player available. I'm not happy about Halfley possibly being the next head coach of Miami. But why, Skunk? Why? Because we don't really know. Because I don't know. I don't know how it would play out. Mannion makes Joe Philbin look like a rock star. You're very confident in your takes that you have nothing, nothing about. We don't know anything about Mannion. It'd be a complete dart throw. I have no idea what would happen. Can you see Downs going top 10 as a safety? Yes. In this class, yes. I hope he falls to 11. Downs would be my most happy pick in this class because I know we'd be getting a stud for sure. I'd be so confident. The only way I would think we'd bust if he just had a horrible injury. Knock on wood. But in this class, yes. I think this class lacks some high-end talent at premium positions, which I think could push up a guy like Caleb Downs. Well, I kind of just answered your question, Grand, but yeah, I would take Downs. But I love Sonny Styles. Sonny Styles is one of my favorite players in this class. I would not be mad with him either. Can we just build the Texans defense? I wish. I love Jalen Petrie. Jalen Petrie is one of my favorite players to watch. That's one of my biggest hits of all time. I mean, we just don't have any idea if that's true or not, Michael. It seems like they've been on Halfley like since the very beginning, and obviously they have that connection with Jon-Eric Sullivan. But I think Halfley is not a good record as a head coach in Boston College. Just a short time as good NFL DC. He really seems like a buddy hire possibility. I mean, I guess that's a possibility. The reason I don't think it's necessarily a buddy hire because he's interviewing with a lot of teams. I think so. Like, if you look at the context clues, he's interviewing with a lot of teams, and a lot of the teams apparently want a second interview with him. And it's been reported like he's been pretty popular. So it was more of a buddy hire. I think like the Dolphins would be the only ones really interviewing him, and it would be like something that would hold on to it till the last second. But it seems like they're trying to rush and get him hired, at least from my perspective. The whole record and head coach at Boston College, personally, I don't really care about that. I think it's just a completely different game to the NFL. Like when it comes to being a head coach in college, like he's just in a bad situation at Boston College. Like when it comes to building your team from recruiting, it's way different from building your team from drafting. He only had one losing season at Boston College, and Boston College has been very bad without him there too. I think they've been even worse. And yeah, he's only had 2 years as a good defensive coordinator, but I think it's enough of a sample size for the D coordinator thing. Once they need a team interviews a head coach, all the other teams are just doing due diligence. I don't think that. I mean, to an extent that can be true, but I think it's definitely past that for Hafley. Because there's a lot of teams out there not interviewing certain coaches, and there's certain coaches we're interviewing that's only like the only ones interviewing them. Yeah, and to be fair, I kind of agree with Troll. I think the GM is more important. I don't even know if we got the GM. I like the stuff he was saying today. Hopefully, he can do the right things. I think he has the right philosophy. Hopefully, he can actually put that philosophy into action. But I do think the GM is more important for the Dolphins right now than a head coach. Because I think the head coach doesn't really matter who it is next year, to be honest. I wouldn't be surprised if they're one and done no matter who it is. We just disagree on this one? I guess. I mean, my point is you don't know. I don't know. That's my point. We both don't really have an idea. That's what I think we're disagreeing on. Is you can't really know if you're like underwhelmed or overwhelmed with a guy like Hafley. I think you maybe can for a guy like if you sign McCarthy, because we've seen McCarthy be a head coach in the NFL for many, many years. We have never seen Jeff Hafley be an NFL head coach, so we just don't know, and we have such a small sample size. Because when it comes to player evaluation, you get a huge picture with the film. The film gives you a huge picture of understanding what the player is, but even then, you can't be 100% sure because you don't know character, you don't get to know everything about them like some NFL teams do, and even then, sometimes you don't know the person on the inside, and that is also a part of it. The film gives you at least 70%. For coaches, you know like 5% about these people when it would become to them being head coaches. So that's why I'm just like, I don't really have a strong opinion about anyone except coaches like Mike McCarthy. I might have a strong opinion about because I've seen him be a head coach for 15 years. I downright hate the idea. And see, that's your problem. You shouldn't hate it. You also shouldn't love it. You can't, I just don't see how you can have a strong opinion about this. My strong opinion is that no one should have a strong opinion about the head coaching spot and GMs. We don't know anything. It's always speculation. Okay, Skunk, then who do you want? Who's someone that you really like? Dun, 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 dun. Texans versus Pats and Rams versus Bears. Probably Texans Rams. I don't know. I'm so middle of the road on Hafley. That's where you should be, Scotty. You should be middle of the road. I'm middle of the road too. I think there's some interesting things I've read that could give you some slight optimism, but like I don't know how to perform as head coach. I have no idea. I don't know. I would prefer Shula or Kubiak over Hafley, and it's not even close. Okay, interesting. So you would prefer Shula and Kubiak, and it's not even close. What in their resume makes you feel that way? Because you said his resume is not good, so their resumes have to be absolutely outstanding. They've never been former head coaches. What do you think we get in trade for Jackson? A fourth? Oh, I doubt it. I doubt you would get much for Jackson. He's got the injury history. You're right. We really don't have an idea. However, we do know about Ross and his goons. Past hires, what has changed? They want yes men who won't rock the boat too much and screw up their money. See, I don't even agree with that. I feel like Ross is very willing to spend his money. I feel like if there's one thing you can give Ross, he's very willing to spend money. Um, I don't know. What has Shula really accomplished, though? Yeah. Same thing with Kubiak. And I think both that Shula and Kubiak could be good, too. I have no idea. I would probably feel the same about those hires as about Halfley. Like, I like Kubiak's offense. He's from the Shanahan scheme. Do I know if he could be a good leader or build a good staff? I have no idea. Same with Shula. Because we have a horrible fan who complains about everything about his situation. Flores is better than Halfley as a defensive guy or as like a head coach? Because we've seen Flores as a head coach, and his problem is it goes a lot deeper than being a good, actually being a good coach. Because I do think he is a very good defensive mind. Not true. No one complained about firing McDaniel. Oh, there's definitely people that complained. You been on Twitter? McDaniel has a pretty big fan base out there, and a lot of other fan bases really want McDaniel. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Flores could be better than Halfley. Who knows? That's my whole point. But I've seen Flores as a head coach, so I know what his weaknesses are, and his weaknesses are not very appealing to me as a head coach. As a defensive coordinator, hell yeah. Until we get a QB, it doesn't matter to the coach. Honestly, pretty true. Pretty much every head coach will fail without a QB. Minter's another one that I like Minter from the outside, but I don't know how he will actually end up doing. Joe Philbin, Adam Gase, Brian Flores, and Mike McDaniel. This roster has changed their approach. I mean, I think all those guys are very different. I was never a fan of Philbin and Gase. I was a fan of Flores and McDaniel because I think Flores is at least a good defensive guy and McDaniel's a good offensive guy. Obviously, it just didn't work out head coach for either of them for different reasons. But I also think you got to look past Miami. But I think people get caught and be like, oh, we just need a former NFL head coach. I'm like, if the right guy pops up, hell yeah, get him. But I also think some of them can be very underwhelming. And I think league-wide, the first-time hires actually end up working out more so. McDaniel's getting a ton of interviews. Yeah, McDaniel's not bad. He had his problems, and it was time to move on. But there's a lot of positives you can take away, and I think in a better situation, he can have success. I'm basing my opinion off of Ross's resume. So as long as Ross is, but if as long as Ross is the owner, then you'll never like any hire they ever make. So it's like, what's the point of even talking about it? If we weren't going to hire a proven head coach, then I would have held on to McDaniel. I mean, I can see thinking that way. I also just think it probably would have been his last year anyways. Next, if he did stay for a year, just because next year is going to be rough, and it would have been his 5th season. The next head coach has a more likely chance of surviving next year. Realistically, I don't think a lot of former NFL coaches want to come to Miami. Fine by me. They don't want to go to Miami because they don't want to ruin their resume with how next year will probably go with them. Because most of the ones available, I think they can do some good things right, but they all have their weaknesses as well. Chris screwed the franchise for the next 5 to 10 years. I think that's pushing it. You can definitely turn it around before 5 to 10 years. Will they? I don't know. That you definitely are capable of turning around quicker than that. Hope McDaniel gets a ring. I'd be happy for McDaniel. I do like Mike a lot. Like he's one of my like. Usually, I would say after the firing, I've been like I never was a fan of Philbin. Gase, not a fan. Flores, I like his defensive stuff, but like when all this stuff come out, I'm like, yeah, move on. Don't need to spend any time talking about Flores. McDaniel, I'm like, I still like McDaniel, but yeah, I think it's time to move on. McDaniel commands zero respect as a head coach from players. Rampage. You're saying a lot of things as facts that you just have no clue if it's true or not. We have no, like, most players have only had positive things to say about McDaniel, and that doesn't mean that they respect him either. Like, we just don't have any clue how true that actually is. I think most of that is just kind of made up BS just because of what McDaniel looks like, or he's not the best talker in interviews. He says a lot. Like, people can respect a lot of different types of other people. I think saying he commands zero respect is just crazy. You don't think anyone respects Mike McDaniel from that locker room? I'm sure there's people that didn't, but yeah. I'm just excited to see what we do, like player-wise, what we bring in. I love the team building aspect. I'm glad that we're at least focused on that. We'll see how Sullivan ends up doing. Sully, what players he ends up bringing in, I'm gonna be looking out for. But yeah. Did the way we lied to McDaniel about coming back and firing hurt our reputation again amongst possible head coach candidates? I doubt it. I doubt it affected it that much. Not behind closed doors, he was viewed as a joke. You in that building, Rampage? You got those sources? I'm sure some people might have viewed him that way. But we don't know that. Yeah. Lots of injury stuff. Okay. Probably head out of here. What time is it? 12:49. Okay. And that's everything I wanted to talk about. Thank you guys for watching. I have perception skills. From your comments, I don't think you do. And I would say I'm pretty perceptive. Okay. Okay, I gotta stop. Okay.